Let's try for split sight.
Okay. My name is Warren DeProm with the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, WARREN DIEPRAAM.
Starting now. Just want to let you know.
And with me to my left is Lieutenant Tim Cade, C-A-D-E, Tim, common spelling, T-I-M, with Montgomery County Constable Precinct 1. And to my right over here is Captain Jonathan, J-O-N-A-T-H-A-N. Did I get that right? Heaton, H-E-A-T-O-N, with Texas Parks and Wildlife. And we're going to have just a brief press conference. I'm going to start off with Lieutenant Cade. They've been very extensively involved in the investigation up to this point, the recovery efforts, and then going to hand it over to Captain Heaton to cover what Texas Parks and Wildlife is doing to assist the Constable Precinct 1 in the District Attorney's Office in trying to determine the facts and circumstances of what happened up here on Lake Conroe last night. So I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Tim Cade.
Go ahead, Tim.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Tim Cade. I'm with the Montgomery County Precinct 1 Constable's Office. Last night at approximately 9 p.m. There was an accident between two vessels colliding on Lake Conroe. One vessel was traveling northbound carrying 8 people, 4 juveniles and 4 adults. The other vessel was heading southwest carrying 2 adults, 2 adult males. Through the investigation, we've seen that one vessel struck the other, ejecting both occupants of the bass boat and 6 of the 8 occupants of the open bow pleasure boat. At that time, the 2 occupants of the bass boat tried to assist with everybody that was in the water. We were called, the Montgomery County, Northern Montgomery County Fire Department responded, Precinct 1 responded, and Texas Parks and Wildlife responded. At that time, 2 juveniles, a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old, were life flighted to Houston Herman, and several other people were taken to Conroe Regional. There was 1 adult female that was still missing at the scene. Search and recovery efforts were immediately started for the one that was missing. Evacuations were immediately started for the wounded. 1 female on the open bow pleasure cruiser was dead on arrival from the impact. At this time, we're trying to determine who all was wearing life vests and who all was not. We're trying to determine the causing factors of the incident. We're working along or co-lead with Texas Parks and Wildlife. Captain Heaton will give you a further statement on that. At this time, the one adult lady that was dead on arrival and the juvenile 9-year-old that was transported to Houston are now deceased. We are still looking for the 3rd victim. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Johnny Heaton, Captain Game Warden for Texas Parks and Wildlife. Right now we've got our statewide boat accident reconstruction team here and working on the accident to try to get to the uncover the investigation, work on the details of it, and also we have our statewide dive team coming to assist with the search and recovery of the victim.
Captain, give us a little hit runs and errors on how you, from land, reconstruct an accident like this. Like, how do you even begin to do that?
Well, our team, I'm not going to get into the details at this point.
On how you proceed? I mean, do you use witness statements? Do you use the physical evidence of the boats? What are the steps that you take to reconstruct?
Well, sure, but I'm not qualified to answer that.
You talk about
the team works.
Can you talk about the conditions out here that, for example, your dive team is encountering, and if that's particularly difficult in this recovery?
Well, their goal is to try to triangulate points of reference to get a good parameter search, to zero in,
9.
to try to recover.
What's the size of the area that your dive team is searching on, and how many folks are?
It's not clear at this point, but I mean, we're probably looking at 300 to 400 yards.
And how deep is that water in that area?
Approximately 25 feet.
Is there anything to compete, like on the bottom? What's the bottom like at that particular area?
It's probably got some things, trees, debris, stuff like that they'll be looking at.
So it's not like it's an open bottom that they're able to just dive down to and.
My name is Warren Prom with the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. We're very appreciative to have the excellent resources that we have out here on Lake Conroe with Precinct 1, with Texas Parks and Wildlife to assist in this reconstruction. At this point, there have been no criminal charges filed. It's standard for the District Attorney's Office to assist in any investigations of this nature where a violent death has occurred. We do not have any indication at this point that alcohol played a significant role in this crash. However, it is not something that we can rule out at this point, so we are looking into the possibility of alcohol's role, if any, in this crash. The operator of the striking boat cooperated with law enforcement last night. He did not exhibit any signs of intoxication or impairment. He did volunteer to give a blood sample to assist in the investigation. That blood sample will be sent off to a specialized lab to determine the presence of any alcohol or drugs in his system. That is obviously something which we're concerned about in any crash, whether it be on land or on the water, because alcohol at this time of the year is a contributing factor in almost 70% of fatal crashes on our roadways, and we suspect that the numbers are probably similar on our lakeways. It's very ironic that most of y'all were out here just last week as these same gentlemen asked the motoring public and the boating public to be very cautious when out on Lake Conroe and our roadways this time of year because of the increased incidence of DWI and boating while intoxicated incidents. We also want to stress that people going out on Lake Conroe, Lake Houston, or Galveston Bay need to have safety in mind. A boat is a very dangerous object when not operated safely or competently, and as we saw unfortunately last night on Lake Conroe, it resulted in at least 2 fatalities. So we want to remind everybody to have proper safety equipment. That includes lighting, that includes life vests on every person in the boat, and to operate at safe speeds. At this point, we have not been able to determine anything other than the general factors leading up to the crash. As with vehicular crash reconstructions, we have experts behind us that are assisting. There are methods that we can use to determine as close as possible what exactly happened, including the recovery of GPS units, engine data, and the mechanism of the damage to the boats and the injuries on the individuals. We are working with the medical examiner's office or the forensic center for Montgomery County to determine exactly how the injuries and the deaths occurred. We're working with Texas Parks and Wildlife with their storm team and with Montgomery County with their excellent investigators that have been to reconstruction school to determine exactly how this crash occurred. At this time, we can't release any specific information other than to say that no charges have been filed. If in a hypothetical situation somebody was operating a boat with criminal negligence or recklessly, that could be a second-degree felony, anywhere from 2 to 10 years probation or 2 to 20 years in prison. Or if somebody is operating a boat while intoxicated and causes a fatality, that's also a second-degree felony with the same punishment range. But I stress, at this point, we have no indication that there was any wrongdoing or anything involved in this. We're treating it as a criminal investigation at this point because that is the prudent thing to do until we can prove otherwise.
What do you know about the condition of the people who survived this incident?
Let Captain Heaton and Lieutenant Cade, if y'all want to come up. I'm not conduct or criminal negligence. Anything, all the factors will be together. Will be combined together to look at the circumstances that contribute to the crash. Certainly, in a hypothetical situation, if somebody were to not put a child in a life vest, that could be an issue that we would look at. If somebody is speeding, obviously people need to operate their boats a lot slower on the lake at nighttime because of visibility issues. That's a factor that would be considered. Whether or not the boat was planing or taking off at a high speed, that's something else to be considered when it comes to operating a boat. So bottom line is there's all sorts of factors and circumstances we look at. That's why we're very appreciative to have Precinct 1 out here and Parks and Wildlife to assist us with their recreation expertise.
Warren, forgive us for our ignorance, but is there a threshold for speed? How do you determine that? You don't see like a 55-mile-an-hour sign out in the middle of the water.
Is there a speed limit?
The specific speed limits and specific times, I leave that to these two gentlemen behind me. They are the actual people that enforce the laws on Lake Conroe. There are limits and no wake zones all over the lake, just depending on the circumstances and the location.
Okay, maybe you could step up and kind of illuminate some of that. Is there?
You get a little closer.
Yeah, why don't you go
Come on in. Whoever's using those lavalier mics is killing all of us.
Yeah.
You just hold it up to him.
As far as a speed limit is concerned on Lake Conroe, during daylight hours, safe operation is the speed. If it gets away from you, you're acting in a reckless nature. That would be considered over the speed limit. At night, the San Jacinto River Authority has put a law on Lake Conroe that at night, after sunset, you can only operate at a planed speed. And what that means is when a boat starts to take off, forgive me, when a boat starts to take off, it starts to rear up in the front, and when it sets back down, that's when it planes onto the water. You can only operate right there at that plane and no further. Now that's very hard to determine through the investigation because it depends on the boat size, the boat weight, the capacity, the people that are in the boat, on whether my boat goes faster than your boat at plane speed. So, and that's what they're trying to determine through this accident reconstruction.
What kind of boat was that pleasure boat?
That's called an open bow pleasure boat.
Open bow?
Yes, ma'am. B-O-W.
You know anything else about it? Who made it? How big it was?
I'm leaving that up to Texas Parks and Wildlife to include in their investigation. I don't want to include that at this time.
Can you say if anyone was wearing a safety vest?
At this time, we are investigating that. I can't confirm or say that they weren't at this time. It's still under the investigation. So at this time, I can't confirm.
Is it Kate, what about the
vest? Is it required to wear that vest while the boat is moving?
Anybody under the age of 13 is required to wear a life vest on a boat that's less than 28 feet at all times, period.
And lights are mandatory at night.
Lights are mandatory after sunset. You have to have the two navigational lights, the red and the green up front, and the anchor, which is a clear white one in the back. There are lights on this vessel, yes.
Were they in use?
Unknown at this time. We'll know through the investigation.
Kate, kind of touch on the rescue last night a little bit. You had multiple people in the water, getting them out of the water, getting them on boats,
Yes.
getting them to land. Kind of touch on that a little bit.
Please try and understand that when you come up on a boating accident, it's not over like it would be on the road. On the road, you're worried about traffic coming past you. On a boat, you're worried about sinking. It's a fluid environment, so that everything is constantly moving. And in a boating accident, time is of the essence. When the Northern Montgomery County Fire Department showed up on scene, their firefighters risked their lives jumping aboard a boat that was sinking to start a triage and start getting people that needed help. They loaded as many as they could onto their vessel and was en route. When Precinct 1 deputies showed up on scene, they were able to secure the sinking boat as well as they could. They were able to secure 2 people that were uninjured on the scene, and they were able to start assisting the Northern Montgomery County Fire Department in the triage and transportation of the individuals that were hurt.
How many trips did it require to get everybody off?
At this time, it was just 2 by our boats and theirs.
How do you go about determining whether definitively lights were or were not on the craft that was saved?
When they're doing their investigation, they will take that to the fullest and in through the wires and all that. I'm not going to comment on that. I don't know exactly how they do it, but they will be able to determine.
Who's the lead agency?
We are co-lead Montgomery County Precinct 1 Constable's Office and the Texas Parks and Wildlife.
Do you know who was operating the pleasure boat at the time?
We do. The pleasure boat was operated by a 45-year-old male who was driver who was injured on the scene.
What's his name?
I'm not releasing that.
Why not?
What was his injury?
Because he's still in the hospital and he's still got family down there visiting. I will start releasing names this afternoon.
Isn't that public record?
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, no, it's not.
It's not
Talk-
public record?
Because this is a criminal investigation, and we have that, so it's not subject to open records request at this time.
Talk to me a little bit about the fact that it's the time of night that it is, why there would even be a question whether there were or were not lights on the boat that was hit. Is it because of the other things in the environment that might make it difficult to see, or how could you know or not know?
Absolutely. Driving a vessel on any body of water at nighttime is extremely difficult. It takes practice and it does take training. You have to educate yourself on how to do this and what you're looking at, because you're looking at different colored lights than and they mean different things from the street to the water. When you have backdrop lights, for instance, Lake Conroe on the south end has a lot of businesses along the side of the lake itself. Those lights can drown out navigational lights if you're not looking for them. So it's very difficult to see navigational lights on the water. It's something that takes practice and training.
Could you tell us?
7 people on it. You guys are
There are 8 people.
Could you tell us again the status of those folks?
Yes, sir. The driver, the 45-year-old male, is still in the hospital down in Houston. A 30-year-old female was dead on arrival. She was killed in the fatality in the accident. A 29-year-old female is still missing, and we are searching with 3 different departments as we speak. A 17-year-old male was uninjured. 13-year-old male was also uninjured. A 9-year-old male later died this morning. A 10-year-old female was transported but later released, and a 3-year-old female is in stable condition in Houston.
Do we know the relationship between the children and the adult victim?
There was a mixture of families on the boat.
Could you break that down? How many families?
At this time, no, sir.
Okay, I can tell you what we got. Can you confirm? Maybe you can confirm that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Driver of the boat has his girlfriend on board and her sister. The small children, let me make sure I'm right about this. The 9-year-old, the 3-year-old, the 10-year-old are the sister's children.
I think it's best that we wait till we speak with the victims' families and get their full statuses before we reveal any relationships. We don't want to reveal that at this time because of the severe circumstances of the crash, and we have the families to think of.
The passenger of the bass boat, a 34-year-old male, was transported and later released. The 43-year-old driver was uninjured. Sorry.
Tim, can you talk for a second about the familiarity of both boat captains with Lake Conroe? Are they familiar with the lake? You talked about experience and the need for that earlier. Is that something that they did have or did not?
I can't say that the passengers on both vessels were local people, but I'm sorry, I don't know them personally, so I do not know what their familiarity level was.
I understand one of the injured is Josh Ward. Is that true?
I can't confirm that. I'm sorry at this time.
Well,
So all the
again,
parties
that's
involved
all
are
over
from
the
this
internet.
area.
It's already being reported. Wouldn't it be better for us to get it from you guys than to get it off the internet?
Yes, we would caution everybody to not rely on the internet for their news, unless it comes from your news stations, of course. But Lieutenant Cade will be releasing that information later on this afternoon, once he has had an opportunity to verify the medical conditions and statuses, and also speak or make contact with the victims' families.
Please,
for further contact with the victims'
How
families.
many boats did the transport? So you made
in this tragic accident, there are families that just lost their baby. There are families that are still waiting for us to find a missing person. We're not releasing names right now, so those families have time to gather out of respect, so that they have time to make sense of this. We're doing our best to gather all the information, do the investigation so that we can speak for those people that can't speak anymore, so that we can tell the family, this is what happened to your loved one. I'm not releasing names at this time. I'm giving them till this afternoon out of respect, just pure respect for the families that just lost their baby.
How long are the divers going to be in the water?
As long as it takes. We don't leave.
You stop at nightfall tonight?
Not tonight.
Go
Last night we did cease the search at 3:30. We were having technical issues, and there was a danger in the element. But we resumed the search after the technical issues were solved, and at first light this morning. And we will go until we cannot go any further.
What's the visibility?
0. Under Lake Conroe water, 0.
So how do you go about then searching? Is it just by touch?
Through technology, we do scans, we pick targets, and then once a diver goes in the water, yes sir, it is by touch.
This is obviously one of the biggest boating weekends
Yes,
of
sir,
the year coming up. What do you want to say to all of those folks who are going to be out here tomorrow night, the next night, the night after that, especially in response to an incident as violent as this one?
I ask you please, know what you're doing prior to setting off in a boat, anywhere in the state of Texas or in the world. Please know what you do. Educate yourself on how to operate that boat, maritime laws, the laws of the area you're going to be in. Please take time to do a walkthrough around your boat prior to putting it in the water. Make sure all of your equipment is working. Please make sure that if you're driving the boat, you're in charge of that boat and the people on it. Please make sure that if you are driving that boat, you are the designated driver or nobody is drinking. Please ensure that you are either wearing your life vest or you have it within reach, not in a cubby hole and not in a plastic container that it so neatly was purchased. Make sure that you have it within reach and it fits you, it's the appropriate size for you. And above all, be cautious out there and courteous to other boaters. And come out and have a good time, absolutely, but know what you're doing.
And we would just like to stress that the designated boater is not the least drunk person. Designated boater is somebody who's had no alcohol to drink whatsoever. Now that's critical to coming out here and safely having a fun time. The law of boating while intoxicated is exactly the same as driving while intoxicated. Anybody who's operating a motor vehicle, anybody who's operating a boat while impaired as a result of alcohol or drugs can face the exact same penalties and consequences as an impaired driver. There are a couple of minor distinctions. It's operating a watercraft in the state of Texas, and a watercraft is obviously a boat or a sailboat, a power boat, but it's also jet skis and it's also water skis. So if you're water skiing out on Lake Conroe or any body of water, you cannot be intoxicated. You could get arrested for boating while intoxicated.
You said there were no signs of intoxication on the driver.